Girl, sometimes being me is as exhausting as it sounds.
You know, I'm glad to hear you say it. Because much like not being disturbed when you have a true crime podcast where we're like, you should get out of the biz if you're like cool with all this, I would be a little worried about you if you were like, this is so easy.
Hi, Julia Pensavale.
Hey, Patrick Hines, banana.
Banana. You guys, welcome to, I don't even know what episode. I think this is episode 10, volume 2, episode 8, or whatever. I can't do the math.
Yeah, I just have it as Unsolved 10 in my notes. It's called Tsunami Spirits.
You guys, if you're looking for more fun, laughs, good times with me and GP, join us on the Patreon. Girl, we're getting really close to 200 full bonus episodes to download and binge right this gosh darn second.
Well, I should hope so, because you've been throwing that number around for like 6 months.
I know. For like the first 2 years, I'm like 140, then like...
Wait, girl, hold on. We've been doing this for like 6 weeks. Wait a second.
You guys, we just finished up The Vow. We're starting the Martha Moxley murder from Oxygen. I knew nothing about this case. It's blowing my mind.
I know. We're in Connecticut.
Those people are rich, girl.
They are so rich that they need actual stadiums. We'll get into it. It's just, there's a lot. The richosity of it all is just off the charts.
But it's all the classic stuff you want us to cover. The Jinx, The Staircase, Serial, Making a Murderer, Lorena.
All 200 episodes of The Vow. There were absolutely 200 episodes of that. Don't F with Cats, I'll Be Gone in the Dark. I think you might have said that. And then after parties, ad-free versions of these episodes, Zoom hangs, where it's just a party.
Everything you can think of, you guys. Also, if you go to our website, check out the merch. We are donating every last penny of our merch sales to charities, and that's like my favorite thing that we get to do every month.
I know. I love that.
Yeah.
Not to like pat us on the back too much, but I love that. Like, it would make me uncomfortable if I'm like, I don't want money. You're wearing a shirt with some stupid thing I said on it. That's amazing. Like, you're amazing. I just feel self-conscious about it. Let's put that money to good use, shall we?
All right, girl, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about Tsunami Spirits, and this is all in Japanese, by the way.
If you guys remember how we did episode 3, which was the French family, what was it called?
God.
The Terror House or something?
Something like that.
House?
The episode that kept Jillian up at night, volume 200.
Yeah, exactly. That was all in French, and so when you guys hear the clips that we use in this episode, it's not going to sound like the real people because it's actually like American voiceover actors. And explain to them about this really intense guy doing the audio descriptions.
Well, I think you have a lady and I have a man, and I want the lady. But yeah, so it's audio description. So it's describing not only it describes everything. It describes everything from the opening credits where it's like doctors roll a gurney, there's a dead body on it. It's just like describing what the images in the Unsolved Mysteries opening credits are, and it also describes everything that's happening. And sometimes he has to go really fast where it's like everything's on fire because the actual closed captions of the dub or the dubbing is happening. It's a mess. How about that?
It is really great for accessibility. Like, I love that this exists, but it is aggressive. And sometimes when I'm like using clips, there's no way to edit around it. So if you hear a really aggressive sounding person explaining what a building looks like, that's what that is, you guys.
Yeah, it's great. It's also, so this is about how on March 11th, 2011, the tsunami that devastated the coast of northeastern Japan. This was a big deal.
It's crazy, you guys.
And so I learned a lot. I still learn every day some things about myself. I, for some reason, avoided the worst of the footage when this was all over the news.
Yeah.
And I know that because seeing it, it's happening right now. Watching this documentary was so physically hard. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I had to stop it many times, and all the times I watched it. And I know that if I had seen the level of footage that we saw in this documentary, I would remember having that experience prior to watching this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So I realized, I was like, this is absolutely tragic. It's like 20,000 lives were lost. This was just an absolute tragedy.
And there is just so much video of it. It is just really bananas.
It's a lot. And it's like, so that's a thing. Oh, great. Another fear to add. Perfect. Another reason for my shoulders to be in my ears. It's super fun being me.
So we get that like perfectly amazing pre-opening credits thing where they give you like the creepiest moment of the whole thing. Yeah. And so we're like with this monk, we learn later he's a Buddhist monk in a temple in this area of Japan, and he's saying,
I asked the man, "Who are you?" He answered, "I'm at the bottom of the ocean." And then he asked me, "Reverend, am I alive or dead?" I said to him, "There was an earthquake. You were hit by a tsunami, and you died."
And opening sequence. Ah!
Yeah. I know. It's just perfectly unsolved. Like, this is just what they do.
Yeah, so it's about how, like, after the tsunami happened, a lot, like hundreds of cases of these really unsolved, unexplainable, supernatural, spooky things started to happen. And that's what this episode's about.
Yeah. And so we learn about this area of Japan that it's like, they say it has everything. It has oceans and mountains and rivers. And they really talk about, like, the ocean and what it means to this community. And, like, we see these aerial shots of it, and it is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And they say that, like, they loved the ocean. The people who live in this part of Japan love the ocean. And then the whole thing is about how, like, and then the earthquake hit. And, like, the ocean, like, for all intents and purposes, like, swallows up parts of this town. So they talk about this earthquake hitting, you guys. The earthquake is, like, what leads to the tsunami.
Right.
We see the video, like, this video part goes on for 5 minutes, where we are seeing the inside of businesses and aerial footage of the town. And it is so terrifying. I've never been in an earthquake.
No.
Like, to see the literal, like, the just shaking of everything, the sound that it makes. And, like, you see, like, the books just falling off the wall, and we're in businesses and things, and everyone is so fucking calm. Did you see how calm everybody was?
I was like, wait a second. It's the unsolved mystery. How are you so calm during an earthquake? Because the thing, what we learn is where it's like people in this area experienced a large number of earthquakes. Like that's just part of the gig, really, of living in this area. And so the issue is that because no one takes care of the earth, I'm not going to make this a whole soapbox thing, but no one gives a shit about the earth. And so the earthquakes get bigger and bigger and bigger as time goes on.
That's my question. Are earthquakes affected by climate change?
Everything's affected by climate change.
Because, like, I need a real answer to that question. Because, like, I need to know how. Like, I understand how everything else is affected by climate change, but earthquakes?
Well, if the earthquake then makes the tsunami work, you know what I mean? Like the domino effect of, like, if the thing that happens after the earthquake is affected by climate change, then climate change affects everything.
Totally.
Also, not a scientist. Please don't quote me. I'm sure you'll come for me on the internet. That's part of the gig. But the one in 2011, this earthquake in 2011, was a 9 on the Richter scale. And I don't know much about anything, but I know that that's a lot.
That's a really, like, the biggest ones before that were like 8.5, 8.4, like a 9.0 on the Richter scale. Again, I don't know anything about anything.
Right.
But that seems like a really fucking high number because it only goes to 10 as far as I know.
Yeah, it does. Doesn't it? Right? Again, don't know anything about anything. Don't quote me on a single thing.
Like, imagine Alexander Skarsgård is like a 9 out of 10.
Sure.
Imagine that as an earthquake. That's how bad it was.
Right. So, in whatever hot guy comparison helps you, when an earthquake is a 9, everyone was like, "Oh shit!" Like a tsunami is imminent. It was so bad that they were like, "Okay, so this is the beginning of something terrible."
Using our emergency radios, we told residents to run away as quickly as they could. We did everything we were trained to do in case of a tsunami.
It also feels like they live in a place where they understand when bad things happen. Like, you can do things to mitigate the loss. I wouldn't have any experience with that living in this country, but, like, it seems like they are practiced on, like, okay, an earthquake happens, you run for the fucking hills. And, like, you hear the sirens, and, like, the guy on the siren is like, "This is an earthquake. You will soon be experiencing a tsunami. Please head to higher ground."
This is a tsunami warning. If you are near the ocean, please move to higher ground.
They're so calm, but, like, everyone knows if you stay calm, you probably survive.
Right. And that is totally valid. This is just I'm just now, I guess, projecting. I would rather, and you can mark this, save this recording.
Sure.
I would rather you screaming at me with the urgency because there's something because again, these people know, like, the fact that there are sirens and, like, the tsunami warning where it's like, if you're near the ocean, please move to higher ground. And I do understand the rationale of like, let's not alarm them. They know. They're not idiots here. And the Japanese people they're not morons. They know, like, get the hell out of Dodge. They totally get it.
Right.
But I want the like, no, girl, fucking run.
Yeah, I don't think that I would be welcome in Japan because when you see the videos, it would be like all these people calmly walking with urgency, and then it would be me.
You are Michael Scott pushing everyone out of the way to get out first.
Yeah. I just rewatched that the other day.
Oh my God.
The one where it's on fire.
Oh
where
my
the
God.
officer, oh my God, it is the funniest thing I've ever
Say
seen.
Bandit. Yeah. That cold open is, and this is a true story.
Yeah.
My hand of God, as they used to say in the old country meaning Queens. That is the hardest I've ever seen my dad laugh. And he's watched it a couple times, and every time it's almost like he laughs harder. And it's the hardest I've seen him laugh, like, by a lot.
It has to be one of the most perfect moments in comedy that's ever happened.
Fire! Oh, fire! Oh, my goodness! Ah, my hand, that's hot!
This was hot too!
Okay, we're trapped, everyone for himself! Okay, let's go! Let's go!
But, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, everyone is doing the right thing, and
That's where we live. We live at Michael Scott at 100.
That's what I'm saying. Like, everyone in Japan is doing the right, normal, rational thing, and I am Michael Scott. Go!
Right.
Run!
And I don't know why, but I prefer that. And I never prefer that.
So, do I have like permission if we ever get stuck in an elevator to do that?
Well, I'm not. Let's not go that far. Let's take it on a case by case basis, shall we? Again, don't quote me.
So, but then we start to see the tsunami, and again, we're not going to dwell on this because this shit is so fucking scary.
Yeah.
But I do want to point out that I had seen some of this footage before because I wanted to see what a tsunami looked like. I was imagining a Hawaii 5-0 enormous hang 10 wave.
No.
That's not what a tsunami is, you guys. We see at the end that at its highest height, it was 136 feet. That's not what this looks like. This looks like it comes up to your waist, but it is going 8,000 miles an hour.
Well, the thing, and I just have, like, I cannot stress how scary and heartbreaking this footage is, but it truly does look like the water is attacking the land. It doesn't look like it's this big, almost like supernatural wave that's just going to engulf everything. It looks like the water is coming so aggressively, but coming like it's like soaking up the land. It's like I can't even.
That, like when you're seeing it roll in, you're kind of like, that is not as scary as it seems. And then when it makes landfall, to say that it picks up vans and buses and houses, it just looks like none of these things weigh anything. It looks like everything is made of paper, and it just rolls over it, and it just sweeps up the town in its wake. And all of a sudden, this town turns into a lake and a river, and like it also seems like there's no end in sight. At one point, we see an aerial view. It's like completely swallowed the town, and now it's rolling into the farmland.
It's crazy. And as if it can't get any worse, when the tsunami is over and like the death and destruction, it's bad enough. But then it starts to snow.
And the snow wouldn't stop pouring down on these drenched survivors. I was completely defeated. Why is nature being so cruel? So merciless to people that are already suffering.
It's a fucking blizzard.
And like they just had the earthquake, all of that destruction. Now the tsunami's happening, and like I can't handle it as a viewer. And the reason I can't handle it as a viewer is because I just keep putting myself in the position of these people. It is truly fucking terrible.
And let me just say, as far as like natural elements go, like an earthquake and a snowstorm are not connected. It's not you know what I mean? It's not the way like an earthquake leads to a tsunami. That makes sense.
Sure.
It just so happens that they had an earthquake and a tsunami on the day of a blizzard. Like that is fucking crazy.
I know. So, of course, this makes worldwide news. Of course, like it was just everywhere. And so, you know, we get all of these stories of survivors just talking about how was it surviving the tsunami on Solved Mysteries?
Yeah.
It felt like I was living in hell. Thanks for asking.
We're with this dad who's just like wandering through like a bamboo forest being like, that's where I found my eldest daughter.
Yeah.
And I found my wife a mile away. Somebody else finds his new baby. Like,
I know.
It really is just terrible. And like, I think to sort of like lead to the spirituality of it, they tell us that due to the lack of electricity, the crematorium wasn't working. And apparently in Japan, they tell us it's a country, we are told, that cremates most of their dead. And so because it wasn't working, they were forced to bury most of these like 15,000 plus bodies with the idea that they would dig them up later and cremate them then. And I think that what we're meant to, pull from this is that this is a country that believes very strongly in spirituality reality and the relationship between the living and the dead. And, according to the people that we meet in this documentary, there's a very thin veil. They don't see death the way that we see it. Whereas like in America, we see it as an end. And they're saying like, no, like it's just another state of existence.
Japanese people don't separate the dead from the living. Shoji is a sliding door made of very thin paper. To Japanese people, death is like shoji. Once you open the sliding door, you go through the other side, and the living can still see you through it.
And I think they're saying that, like, one of the reasons to explain why so much, like, crazy phenomena happened in the wake of these deaths was because these, like, spirits were very confused. Like, their bodies weren't handled the way that they are used to being handled.
Right. Because then, 3 months after the tsunami, this journalist arrives, and he's immediately hearing about the spooky season, the ghosts, all of this stuff. And by October, I'm like, a little on brand, universe. But by October, the supernatural stories were through the roof.
I think one thing to point out, though, is that, like, we're calling it supernatural. And I think in this part of the world, what we're learning in this episode is that, like, this is accepted there and,
sure.
and expected. So it's not like this is an area where they don't ever talk about ghosts and then all of a sudden all this shit was happening. Like, it's kind of normal, I think, there, except, like, it's happening on, like, a really grand scale.
Yeah, they're not mad about it.
Right. Meanwhile, I'm running around the office turning on every fucking light. Like, this shit scares the living shit out of me.
The thing is, I agree, though. Like, I'm like, okay, so you were forced to go against your traditional way of mourning, and then suddenly this, like, and also this triple hit of, like, the earthquake, the tsunami, and, like, I'm with them on this.
Wait, where are you on the spectrum of, like, ghosts are real?
They're totally real.
And where are you on, like, heaven, hell, that whole thing?
Oh, God.
Not to put you on the spot or anything, girl.
No. I have a very sort of, it's sort of like when we were talking about UFOs that I'm kind of like, I'm open to all of these conversations. I guess that's like an agnostic where it's like, I know that there's something else there. I can't 100% define what it is, but and I'm a spiritual, I got the incense and the sage and the tarot. And I know that's not the end all be all. And of course there are different levels of it, but I'm just like, to me, this makes sense. Like if these spirits are coming back after this horrible 3 months that happened in Japan, to me, I'm like, that is right on cue. Like, I completely believe what's happening here.
Same. I mean, I do think some of the stories are a little far-fetched for me, but in general, I believe what's going on.
Yeah, I meant to say that...
No backsies, girl. No backsies.
I understand that these people are like, this isn't weird. Like, I don't think it's weird that there's some kind of, that the veil is thin, I
totally agree.
So one day, our journalist friend is here, and one day this man reaches out to the journalist, and we hear, his name is Endo, and we hear this story.
Yeah.
And the story is that on the day of the earthquake, he goes to a shelter looking for his mother.
Like thinking that she was displaced, maybe she's here, like he's just walking around trying to find her.
Right, and he was told, oh yeah, just wait here.
While he was waiting, he saw an older woman looking out the window and wearing his mother's clothes. As he looked closer, he realized she was his mother. He took out his camera to take a photo of his mother so his family would know she's safe.
And he looks closer and he's like, oh shit, that is my mom. Like there must have been a miscommunication because this person is going to get her, but oh wow, she's right here. Like great, right? Absolutely not. This is called Unsolved Mysteries. Welcome. So he sees her and he's like, oh hey mom, let me just take a photo real quick to show the rest of our family that you're okay and that I have you and that like everything's fine.
Yeah.
So then he says, Endo, the guy telling the story, says,
he points the camera at her and looks at her image through the preview screen, then takes the photo. He lowers the camera and sees a different woman. Shuji explains,
but the woman's face changed into someone he'd never seen before.
And it turns out that right as he was taking this photo, his mom is like riding in a bus somewhere, and the bus that his mother was riding in was washed away by the tsunami.
Like he would later find out that at the very moment he's taking this woman's picture, his mother was probably succumbing to the tsunami.
I wish we had confirmation on the timing of this.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how we know that, right?
Right. I mean, that's kind of my MO for this whole document. We just have to take it all at face value. You know what I mean?
It is Unsolved Mysteries, after all. Right. I should be reminding myself that, not just the listeners. I should take my own advice. Great.
So that's the first story that we hear. And then we hear the journalist tells another story that there's a mother who had lost her 3-year-old son. Like, I cannot imagine the depths of that loss. And it was a while later, and the mom had been really depressed and, been suffering panic attacks. And one night she's making dinner for her and her husband. And, we see a reenactment of this, and it's a beautiful reenactment. And the mom, turns around to, a pile of her son's toys and says, hey, come join us for dinner.
Sho-chan, let's eat together.
She grabs her chopsticks and eats dinner with her husband. The child's train toy activates by itself. The woman stands up in astonishment and watches the lights flash on the toy. Shuji Okuno recounts,
The toy had a manual switch inside of an electric one, so there'd be no way it could turn itself on.
And one of his electric choo-choo trains just starts choo-choo. I literally screamed, girl. I knew something creepy was going to happen, but when that happened, I jumped out of my seat.
Well, because we're here with this mom because our journalist friend says, people were kind of desperate to hear from their loved ones at this point, and they were looking for messages and looking for connections. And so this mom, in her grief, is now convinced that her son's spirit is communicating to her through this choo-choo train. Yeah. So when she turns to the pile of toys, she is actually talking to her son saying okay, there's a connection there for her.
Yeah.
But when that toy turned on,
I know.
Oof maron.
Because the thing about it, and I don't know if this is where they tell us, but I want to say this here. The people in Japan, according to this documentary, they don't handle this grief and trauma the way that we in the West tend to. So, according to this one PhD guy that we meet, he's saying that, they don't seek out grief counseling the way that we do in America because we view death differently. Most of us see death as an end, and maybe we'll be reunited later or whatever, but they view it differently. And so they don't seek out this grief counseling because they feel like it will erase their chance to keep communicating with the person on the other side.
They know that they'd feel much more at peace with a counselor, but they're afraid it would make them forget the deceased.
And so my point is that's great because it's this very thin veil and, they're always still around. And I agree with that. I completely understand. And I'm not diminishing that. But the thing is, when you have an earthquake plus a tsunami, and a blizzard, that just equals trauma. It's not necessarily about your grief and how you handle death because you're not mourning someone who passed away peacefully in their sleep at 98 years old.
Right.
You lived the destruction. Those are noises you can't unhear. Those are images and sounds that will live with you forever. And we're not talking about that part of it. So I hear the grief, but there's trauma there.
Yeah. Can we revisit the blizzard? Why?
God, why? Girl.
Why'd you have to do a blizzard?
I don't know why she did that.
But I'm with you totally that you can have both. The belief that you can still communicate and also the grief counseling. Grief counseling is a real thing.
Right. And also I survived a tsunami and an earthquake and a blizzard and no one's talking about that part of it. I don't know if no one in Japan, I'm not saying nobody did, in this episode, what we're watching, they don't discuss that. And I think that's a missed opportunity. I'm saying it.
So we're back with the monk from the beginning who was talking to the dead guy at the bottom of the ocean. I love this monk. I want to go to Japan and meet him. He seems awesome.
This monk and his awesome wife.
And his awesome fucking wife, who we'll get to in a minute. But he's the kind of spiritual person who says shit that is normal to him that is terrifying to everybody else. Because he says,
many of us have lost loved ones without saying goodbye. We don't think it's fair. The deceased feel the same way.
The deceased feel the same way.
See, I don't think that's terrifying. I'm I'm with you. I'm with him on that. I'm absolutely, they have some shit to say.
I totally agree, but that means they're standing right behind me. Yeah,
but if it's me, wouldn't you be happy to see me?
I would be happy to see you, but you know that if God forbid if something were to happen to you and then you came back to me in the middle of the office, that would be scary.
And I came back to you. That's a very sweet way to say it. I came back to you.
I'm serious. What if you just I could totally see you coming back to me for I know where the good Pinot Gris is kept. You know what I mean?
Well, I would do it in a way. I would think, again, I have no experience with this. I would think that maybe I would find a way from the other side to just give you hints girl, I'm coming. Girl, don't be scared. But at happy hour on Tuesday, if you look to the left.
This is a good deal. Let me have had a cocktail or two, and then I think it'll be fine. But if I'm alone at the office on a Sunday morning and all the lights are off, and then all of a sudden you're standing the fuck in front of me and you've been dead for 2 weeks, I'm gonna scream.
I think I would know enough to be able to say, somehow communicate to you. Again, I don't know how they do this, but say to you, like, girl, don't freak out. But when that light flickers, it's me. It's totally cool. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I got the most, and look, they have like the butteriest shard up here. It's totally fine. I snagged some. She said it was cool. I just totally went in and got some. So don't worry about it. So if you just, you know what it'll be?
Yeah.
One day, this is what it's going to be. One day, you'll walk in and there'll just be like a buttery shard in your collection of wine that you're like, I don't know what this is. Like, Steve, did you buy this? And he'll be like, no. And then the label will be like, girl, it's me, or something.
Girl, it's me, buttery shard. Oh my God,
and then you'll know, and then that'll be fine, right? That'll work.
I'm so glad we worked this out in front of the listeners. I think it's very important.
I hope I remember that when it's time.
I feel like you're making this deal with a lot of people, so you should start writing it down.
Look, I know, as a bartender, you don't always remember everyone's names, but you know exactly what everybody drinks.
Yep.
All right, that's my gig now. Okay, so now we hear another story from the journalist who's here getting stories from people.
I don't understand this story. The story starts and it doesn't end.
I agree.
I went back. I thought I missed something. It's scary as fuck, you guys, but I just feel like it needs an ending.
It's scarier because we don't know what really happened, and we're not entirely sure who's who. Okay, so it was a clear night. There's a woman. She's preparing a meal, and she hears a knock at the door. Yeah. And a young woman she opens the door, and it's a young woman who is drenched. They say it's almost as if she went swimming in her clothes. That's how, completely soaked. Yeah. And this visitor asked this woman for some dry clothes. And the woman, who's very nice and not afraid. I mean, that's like The Strangers, that horror movie I hate.
I was totally like the knock on the door. Like, that is The Strangers.
And she's like soaking wet. Like, can I have like that? Like, there are other people around the other side of the house coming to murder you and cut the phone lines and cut your internet because like you're so nice that you're helping this drenched woman.
The visitor asked for some dry clothes.
The woman goes to collect some clothes. Later, she gives them to the girl. The girl bows in gratitude, and the woman slides her door shut.
So she gives her the clothes and sends her on her way.
But like gives her the clothes but doesn't invite her to come in and change into them?
Exactly.
Kind of rude, I think.
There's so much of the story we don't know. Yeah. So she sends this woman on, like, here are the clothes. Also, like, what's your name? Like, are you all right? Is there anything else you need? I feel like there might be another thing you need other than dry clothes. So again, according to this documentary, whatever. Yeah. So she sends the woman on her way in like clothes that I hope she doesn't really care about all that much because she's never seeing them again. So she goes back, she's making dinner. Once again, 3 knocks at the door. Yeah. And then we see in the reenactment, there are 3 more people soaking wet, again, like they went swimming in their clothes at her door. And then that's the last thing we hear about the story.
I rewound that 4 times. I was like, am I missing something?
Because they went out of their way. They did the reenactment. They paid those actors. There were people, they did lighting stuff. Like to do that reenact, because it's beautiful.
It's like
spooky
house
and beautiful. It's like really gorgeous. Yeah. But we never come back to it.
No, and maybe it's connected to the next story. Like maybe it's the same woman, but suddenly we're with another woman who's walking around the village that she used to live in. That was one of the villages that there's no other way to say it. I'm not making a joke. That was like swallowed up by the ocean when the tsunami happened. And she's telling us that after the tsunami, the spirits wanted to go home. But the city had changed so much that the spirits didn't know where they were or how to like contact their families. And then suddenly we're sitting with this woman, same woman, for like a 2-camera interview. And she just says, and she says it knowingly, and she goes,
some people can see ghosts, and others can't. I have always been spiritual and a bit odd since I was a child.
I've always been spiritual and a bit odd ever since I was a child. I went, me too, girl.
Yes, and I'm like, I feel very seen right now.
And she just says it like, she's like, I have been able to see dead people my whole life, and when I was a kid, I thought everyone could see dead people, but then it turned out that it was just me. Oh my God.
Can you imagine if you were like,
there's that dead person. I know. No, I can't. Like, that is really scary to me. There was a time when Daisy was a baby that I thought she could see dead people. It scares me to this day.
Well, kids have a lot going on, but I think kids are, there are a lot of horrifying stories of kids just like waking up their parents in the middle of the night where it's like, hey, that old woman wants to play chess or whatever. And the parents are like, what the fuck?
I know.
It's like, oh, my best friend, that old man, all in black, right?
Know,
and they're like, what?
So Daisy now will come into our room, like I'll be dead asleep, and I'll just feel like a poke on my arm, and I'll open my eyes, and there's Daisy, like in silhouette, staring at me. You guys, it's The Ring. I live The Ring every single night.
She's got that long hair, too. I don't know how you parents do it. Unbelievable.
Also, I think our room in our new apartment might be haunted. More on that later. So she says, like, because she can talk to the dead people and she can see them, she is always asked by people, like, what do ghosts look like? And now, I'm not saying that I don't believe her. Like, she seems very nice and credible, and why would she make this up? But, like, she describes ghosts in the most, like, I don't know, TV version of what a ghost looks like.
They appear as a slightly transparent reflection through a glass window.
Like, she's talking about Casper the Friendly Ghost, where you can kind of see through him, you know?
You can kind of see through them, but you kind of can't.
Yeah. So I was kind of like, okay, tell me more.
I mean, she'd be great for cocktails, no?
She would be great. And she's got a podcast in her, please. Look at her.
I mean, 3 people who are just like, oh, people have thought I was weird since the get-go.
I know.
Like the 3 of us at cocktails, like, yeah.
So she says one night she was driving home from somewhere, and she was stopped by a group of men that were killed by the tsunami.
A man stands in the middle of the road, holding out his hands to stop her.
They didn't seem to know that they were deceased. But I knew they were no longer living in this world from how they appeared.
She says, I could have ignored them, but I felt sorry for them, so I stopped.
Well, you know, if you have this power where you can see them, I'm happy to report that she's not garbage, that she's like, well, I'm not just going to let them wander around aimlessly looking for their homes that have been destroyed.
I agree, but like, I would definitely do the thing of like, it's dark out. Could you step in front of the headlights so I could make sure that you're transparent and not out to like rob and kill me?
Right, like a group of 3 men at night stop the car. I'm like, bitch, you fucking haul ass pedal to the metal.
Yeah,
Get
you make
out
sure
of
that
there.
you can see through them. If you can see through them, fine, stop. If you can't, you keep fucking going.
And she says, like, she explains to them, she tells them the truth about what happened. She's like, I didn't want them to suffer anymore. And it's like, when you think about it, God, it's so heartbreaking. Like these 3 kids just like walking around aimlessly, not knowing where they are on like the spiritual plane or where their home is.
Because she says that she tells them that they've all passed away, you know, and they kind of seem to accept it. But I was like, no, what if you're just like drunk and like stumbling home from the pub and you have to convince this woman that you're actually not dead? You just need directions.
Yeah, I would really love that misunderstanding where they're just hammered and she's like, no, but you're dead. And they're like, wait, what? And then you like convince these 3 drunk people that they're dead and lost.
That could be really dangerous. You have to really know that they're dead if you're going to tell them that they're dead, because if you convince these 3 hammered guys, I've been drunk enough that if some nice old lady told me that I was dead, I probably would have believed her and thought I could fly and then tried it.
And then you're just like, no, I can totally fly across 9th Avenue.
I'm dead. What does it matter?
I think she is like, no, bitch, I know for sure that they were dead.
Totally.
Like, I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts with this woman. I think she's like, you know nothing about this. I know about this. And just listen to me, please.
Yeah, like if you've grown up with the dead, then I feel like you probably can spot them. I would agree.
That's a thing you just said, huh? You grow up with the dead. So we're with this professor who's also looking into these stories. And he says, he's like, you know, a lot of people were seeing a lot of dead people around this time. You know who was the most believable? The cab drivers. And I'm like, the cab drivers are the most believable. Let's dive into this.
So he gives us the first story of this. He says, you know, Japan is really hot in the month of August.
A man with a winter coat stopped a taxi around this time. The driver felt there was something strange about the passenger.
And by the time they arrived where they were going, the sun had set, so like it had gotten dark. It seems like it was like a very long ride. And so in the way the reenactment is shot, like we see the guy in the back of the car in the rearview mirror, and then like we see the driver put the car in park, and he turns around and the guy is gone.
The driver looks in the rearview mirror and sees the backseat empty.
When he looked back, the passenger was gone.
Of course I screamed. That's what I do.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is Unsolved Mysteries, but again, you're you, so you just will scream. And apparently, like, several taxi drivers had these same experiences where they were picking people up and maybe they were dressed, I don't know, like for March, like the winter coat in August. And then they would drive to sometimes really far away. Like they were just driving to all these places. The meter was going, which this journalist wants us to know that like the meter was running and all. I'm like, right, because it's their job.
Well, and also because he's saying that like, it's an actual log of the fact that these trips happened. And he tells us that like the cab drivers they're not lying. Like, they paid these fares themselves. Like, when they got where they were going and the people vanished, somebody had to pay the fare, and it was the cab drivers. And, like, why would they make that up? You know?
And it also got to the point where it was like among the cab drivers, they knew this was happening, and they would happily pick up these spirits and drop them off where they wanted to go and just happily pay the fare.
That is very nice. But, like, look, I don't know if all these cab drivers grew up with the dead the way the last lady did. If I'm a cab driver, like, the third time a guy in a heavy coat with a calendar flipped to the month of March gets in my cab and I know it's a ghost, I'm scared. You know what I mean?
I think they should link up with our friend who's like always been a little weird. And I say that like as someone who's always been weird myself. I myself am strange and unusual.
Exactly.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
But they should drop them off with her because she has the foresight to tell them the truth instead of all these cab drivers. Like, again, it's very nice you're eating that money, but you can't just like drop them off in the middle of nowhere and then just make them even more lost.
No, these ghosts just vanish. That's the whole thing. And also stop looking down at the thing that puts the car in park. Watch them vanish. I want you to watch them vanish.
But just because they're vanished out of the backseat of the car doesn't mean they're not lost.
I know.
So we have the professor who's like, yeah, I don't really believe in ghosts, but also at the same time, I'm open to it. Like he's just like, totally. I can't really explain this either. And so then we're back with the Reverend, the monk.
Yeah.
And he's just like, these scientists, man. They just don't get it. You know, they focus on evidence and logic and, you know, they tell us we're just superstitious. And he just says, you know,
throughout our history, there's always been a special relationship between the dead and the living. So when disasters like this happen, these ancient spiritual roots within us are reawakened.
You can interpret it however you want, and that's totally fine. But at the end of the day, these interpretations mean nothing to the survivors. And here I am screaming, saying, like, just let them have this.
Right.
What does it matter to you, you, like, scientist who just wants to be right about everything all the time?
Totally.
Like, even if you are a survivor, too, and you're being, like, a dick scientist, stop being a dick scientist. As a survivor, you should know better. But if you're not from Japan and if you didn't live it and you're, like, talking shit or just, like, looking down on these people who have gone through something that, like, thank God you haven't gone through, just let these people have it.
So,
come on.
I'm going to say something that has quickly become very unpopular on this podcast and is unpopular in our country. In defense of science,
hey, no.
I'm just kidding.
You know I love science. I love her.
Joking. But in defense of science, there is a part of me that feels like what they said earlier in this episode is that we have to continue suffering so we can continue to see our loved ones. And I think what the scientists are trying to say is that, like, there is also another way, though.
Well, I completely agree with you. I think that many things can be true at once. I think you can mourn and grieve and have memories of them and also do that in a positive way where you live a life that honors them without just, like, sobbing all the time.
Yeah, and this is different, too, because it's a very traumatic event that happened out of nowhere. So, like, that adds all the rest of the spookiness shit to this, you know?
100%. Again, like, we're sitting here having never gone through an experience like that.
Totally.
But I agree with you, too. Like, a lot of things can be true. There's got to be a better way.
So we're with the monk, who I really love, and he's telling us the story that one night his wife answered the door. Again, the reenactments in this episode are gorgeous.
They're beautiful, and they're at the temple, right? So this woman comes to the door of the temple. Again, knock, knock, knock. I'm like, oh my God.
I know.
Like, here we go. Oh my God. So this, like, his wife answers the door, and she says to her husband, this woman she's ill. Like, we need to help her. Something's happening.
The woman said, I feel many people inside me. Please help me, Reverend Kaneda. People like her have visited me before. But I never met someone who suffered as much as she did.
She's saying, there are all these people inside me, all these spirits. I can't stop them. And I'm struggling. I'm hurting. It's painful. There's a lot going on. Would you help me? Could you imagine if he was like, you know?
Our business hours will be open again at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Yeah, this is why we loved him. Because from the beginning, he's like, 24 hours a day, I will hold your hand through this shit.
And that's what's so amazing about, like, the good spiritual people is that, like, they, like, it's not a job. It's their calling, you know?
Totally.
So her name is Ami, and we meet her. She's in silhouette. Like, she doesn't want to be seen, but it's very cool. She's telling us her story, he's telling us the story, and we're seeing a reenactment of it at the same time. And she is saying,
at the time, I really didn't understand what was going on with me. All I could feel was pain. It was so painful that I wanted someone to kill me.
So the monk is working with her. I mean, this is an exorcism, right? So
right, and he says that eventually.
And he's like, "Oh, I've done this 100 times. Was this the worst one? 100%.
Yeah,
This was the worst, like the most emotionally trying.
Yeah.
Physically, like this is the worst one. But girl, this is not my.
But I got
first
this right.
rodeo. Like, please. Have you seen My Beautiful Temple? Have you seen My Amazing Wife? Like cool.
And the monk is just saying to us, like, he worked with Amy over and over again. He says something to the effect of, like, it took a lot of time and a lot of incense, you guys.
At one point, he was like, Ami's hands down the most possessed person I've ever met.
Totally.
And I'm like, this woman, all the tolls it could take, physical, emotional,
I know.
To be the most possessed person that a seasoned monk has ever met, that is saying something.
But Ami is saying to us that, like, much like that other woman, even before the tsunami, ghosts bothered her all her life. And after the tsunami, the ghosts were, like, invading her body. And so she was saying that, like, she was coming to see the monk, like, every day. She'd get there at 7 in the night. It'd take until 3 in the morning to get all the ghosts out. And then one night, like, this story is fucking terrible. Yeah. She said that she could just feel the spirit of a little girl inside her. And this little girl, during the tsunami, had to let go of her little brother's hand.
The girl heard her brother saying, "Sis, I can't run anymore," but she wouldn't respond to him because they had to keep running from the water. I could see, hear, smell, and feel everything, even the touch of the brother's hand. She was so scared. And I was too. When she looked back, she saw her brother being washed away.
And she's saying that, like, in the afterlife, she's looking for her mother because she wants to apologize to her mother for letting go of the brother. And we see, like, the reenactment of Ami, like, on the ground. She's just, like, a total wreck, like, being inhabited by this spirit. And the little girl within her is screaming out, like, I want my mommy, I want my mommy.
And this is when the monk's wife comes into play because she steps in and she acts as the mother for this little girl. And she holds Ami's hand to help the spirit girl. And she says,
I said, "Mom is right here. I will never let go. You are always here with me." I said to her, "Let's walk towards the light." And she started to follow me. I told her, "Go to the light. Everyone is there waiting for you." Then Ami was finally able to let go of my hand.
And she sort of gives this little girl inside Ami the freedom and rest she needs. And also, it's not your fault, little girl. This was a tragedy. No one had any control over it. It's okay. Like, you will be loved. It's all right. You're okay. Yeah. You didn't do anything wrong. You did what you could. You're a little kid.
I know. And this monk, like, I just, like, love him so much at the end of the episode because he has so many things that he says that are just so great. He's saying, like, every person is on the spectrum of what they can see spiritually, but, like, that tends to expand in a disaster. Like, and I love that what he means by that is that, like, we all have superhuman abilities to, like, feel empathy and see things and help, and, like, the world is multi-layered and the dimensions are real, and, like, a tragedy like that sort of brings out the humanity in people.
And I just do want to say one thing, like, the Reverend's wife is here too, and she just says in her way, she's like, look, just like for the record, I'm not, like, walking into cocktail parties talking about this. Like, like, because they kind of became known, like, this, like, Ami was going there constantly to help the spirits inside her. And so the Reverend's wife is like, I only talk about this when I'm asked. Right. She is not you, girl, walking into the cocktail party being like, who wants to ask me about that exorcism? Which one, the first one or the third one? Because that was, how much time you got? Everyone gather around. So, like, that's not her.
No, not her at all.
And so the monk says, I have this sense of duty. Now, these people are coming to me. There's a lot happening. A lot of people need help in whatever ways they do. So he opens Café du Monk.
You guys, the monk opens a coffee shop. It is amazing. Café du Monk. I want to go to Japan and go hang out at this coffee shop.
Oh, so now you're coming with me to Japan? Before I was going by myself.
You guys, TCO Live Show in Japan 2022. We're doing it.
Are you kidding me? I'm, like, dying to go. Oh, my God. So it's, like, a really, really beautiful thing that came out of this horrible tragedy.
And, like, in the end, he's saying, like, people ask me all the time, especially around here, like, there's ghosts aplenty. Like, what happens when the ghosts come to me? They're really scary. I don't like it.
Yeah, he's like, here's what you should say. Here's a script if this helps you. Here's what you tell the ghost. You say, ghost, you are dead. There is a world for you. That world's over there. I'm living here. I will see you later. And I do think that is like a beautiful way to say there are two worlds here.
Yes.
Yeah, the veil is super thin here in Japan or wherever you are. You do your thing. I'll do mine. We'll meet up in a little bit. Cocktails on me. And I'm like, fuck yeah. Let's do that.
Oh my God, you guys, we just did Unsolved Mysteries episode 10, girl.
Yeah, season 2, episode whatever.
Yeah,
anyway, we're going to Cafe Du Monk. We have a date at Cafe Du Monk. I'm excited to go.
Listen, if you want more Jillian and me, join us on the Patreon. It's over like 150 full bonus episodes to download and binge right this second, you guys.
I can't. Well, what are we going to do when we actually can say 200? We have to have some kind of sound effect or a party or confetti or something.
We need someone to count it up. Every now and then, someone will count all the actual full bonus episodes. We are getting close. With all those episodes of The Vow, we gotta be getting close to that 200 mark, girl.
I mean, it felt like 200 anyway. Yeah, so we have like every versions of these episodes. We have after parties. We have a whole, but it's just fun. Everyone's welcome. If you want to come, great. If you don't, that's fine. We'll see you later.
Yeah, that's it,
press.
guys. We love you. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for making this our job. We love you so much.
We love you. Did you hear me? That's like the monk vibe, where I'm like, you do you. We'll do us. If you want to come, great. I'm trying to channel him. I like him.
All right, we love you guys.
Bye, we love you.
Bye.
Oscar's legs coming out of the thing. Michael screaming, help! Trying to throw the Xerox thing out of the window, and it just bounces right back. It is flawless.
That's the best part right there. I mean,
he's just screaming help, like at the window, not even out the window, just at it.
You definitely do not want to be stuck in an elevator with me. That happened to a group of people once. It didn't go well. I'm not invited to the reunion of that getting stuck in an elevator party.
How long were you I mean, it can't be that long, can it?
40 minutes. We were in an elevator for 40 minutes. It was in the WeWork where we used to work. It was real bad. It was really bad.
Oh, God. And then you were stuck in there and then went to that place where we were, that office space where we were so close to each other that our knees touched for 4 hours. That was, you know how much we hate the heat? That was the hottest I've ever been, and not in like the sexy way. It was like the hot, like just the sweating and knees touching. I love you, girl, but I never need to touch your knees again.
right back at you on all points.
I have a maybe haunted story about my new apartment too.
It's so weird. The covers at the end of our bed move by themselves all the time at night.
It was in our bed. I thought I could have sworn that Mike crawled into bed and was touching my leg, and I woke up and nobody was in the bed. And it happened 3 nights in a row.
Oh,
and
my
it was
God.
And yeah, because when you're asleep and you feel like your person, and I sort of went, and then I was like, why is there nobody here?
Oh, my favorite version of that, though, is when Dorothy is climbing into bed with Ma, and Ma thinks it's her husband from the 1940s.
Sure. It was exactly like that. And then it was frightening for a second, and then I was like, ooh, I could stretch out. Great.
I know. Ghosts take up very little room, it turns out.